All right. Another very special episode here. Longtime competitor, but longtime friend. Jason Moser, the legend, the Brook Hollow legend. Thanks for being here, man. This is fun. I'm glad we're doing this. So.
Yeah. When I heard that you were doing it, it piqued my interest. It really it's really cool you're doing this.
Yeah.
Some great stories that you're bringing out of people that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, no, it's fun. We were just talking before we started here about, just documenting, life and, documenting your, we were talking about documenting really kind of more like our family's lives and stuff like that. And that's, that's all this is a documentation of just kind of the guys that have really shaped, the mostly Dallas industrial market, which has turned into probably one of the top chased asset classes in the world, and it's kind of funny to think, 20 years ago, did you ever think anybody would really care that much about this stuff?
No, absolutely not. What really kind of gets me, makes me think how cool it is we worked, or the area we work, South Stemmons, is where the warehouse was invented.
Yeah.
1948 at Cole and Levy.
Yeah.
First building, I think, that Crow ever built. Still there, that Harlan still owns it.
Yeah.
And but have you ever read the Master Builder by Trammell Crow?
No, I need to.
You need to read it.
Yeah.
You'll be shocked. It's some of the stories about how they built a building for $4 a foot and they leased it for 20 cents a foot, and everybody just kind of shows up at the scene, right? It's the lender is there. He shakes his hand. Oh, this is tenants there. It's all handshakes. But anyways, yeah, that was definitely looking back, how cool that all the history that's in that South Stemmons corridor and how it formed Dallas after Stemmons gave all the floodplain area to Dallas to save Dallas from flooding, you know, and created an industrial park. But,
it's someone put on Twitter the the letter's longer than this, but the letter that Trammell Crow wrote back when, kind of like the early 2000s crash or something like that, and what he learned and all this stuff. And and has like 25 things on it. And it's funny. And, one of them was just because you have the capital doesn't mean you have to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny. We were looking at a deal the other day and we just kind of referred back to that. We're like, well, we have the money to do this, but we don't have to do this. So it's so cool, really, with the Dallas, Trammell Crow. It's pretty interesting that he came out of Dallas because it really just, he was the man for this stuff. And it's funny. What do you think the meetings were like at those buildings where the builders showed up and the bank showed up and they're like, yeah, we're going to make this clear height 10 and then we're going to make this one 20, right?
Yeah.
On one, and we're going to cut a door in between.
No, they didn't know what they were, he must have been signing some good personal guarantees or something. But they didn't really know him or trust him. And why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And it was probably a lot of trial and error, right?
Yeah. So, but man, golly, he built every stinking building down there,
It's crazy.
And what a vision, man. So well, let's talk about you. Where let's just get into your story, man. Where you grew up in Dallas.
Dallas, yeah. Got in the real estate business really because of my dad and my family history. And just a little quick thing on my family history. So the Mosers got to Dallas in 1878 from Switzerland.
Oh, wow.
And had some of the first dairy farms in Dallas. There were 3, one at Ross and Henderson. There's 60-acre farm there where my grandpa grew up. And then one over off of Nagel Street. And if you pull up the surveys and it says Moser Industrial Park.
Yeah.
It's only like 4 buildings probably that have the same Moser Industrial Park.
But that's an industrial park.
It's an industrial park. It's not one of the better ones. It's probably the worst next to Halifax, the Nagel Street.
Yeah.
And then one underneath White Rock Lake.
Underneath the lake.
Mm-hmm. So they condemned it when they built the lake.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
They're
is this like a New York tunnel that's a dairy farm?
David Koresh? Yeah. We the Mosers, that claim to fame, they like to say they were the first to deliver milk and butter door to door in Dallas.
So y'all actually had the milkman going out door to door.
Yes, I've got pictures of a horse-drawn carriage with a guy on a buggy, and he's delivering milk.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just says Moser on the side of it?
Moser Dairy Farm.
Moser's Dairy Farm?
Yeah. So they sold to, I believe it was Cadbury Schweppes, and they kept the real estate. And it was in 1910 that they formed Moser Company, and they started selling lots.
Okay.
And so
residential lots?
Residential lots. Mm-hmm. So that Moser Street is still there. It's back behind.
Is this part of one of the farms? They started developing
this was the
farm.
biggest one, I think. It was 60 acres.
Okay.
And so that's where Moser Street is, basically at Ross and Henderson. And my great, so I'm a fifth generation Dallas, and my great grandmother, Anna Burer Moser, she put a deed restriction on that still carries through, and we're getting calls now. My dad's kind of the ringleader because there's like 50 relatives that are all splitting the money, but different developers are calling and saying, we want to, it was a height restriction.
Oh, okay.
2.5 stories tall. Couldn't go higher than 2.5 stories. Why she did that, nobody knows.
But it's genius.
Yeah. So now,
because you're willing to lift it.
Yeah.
If they lift that wallet.
So it gets split up 1,000 ways, but my dad has made a couple of deals with a couple of developers that have bought and torn down. It's pretty much apartment bill over there right now. Before they tore them down, and now after, but it's evolving, and so that dairy business. Let's see, that turned into the Moser Company in 1910, and then my grandpa, he came back from. He went to Texas A&M and then came back and went to work for his dad. And so he started working the Stemmons corridor, and he was working the Trinity Industrial District. There's no design district. There's no Brook Hollow. Yeah. And so he started.
So wait a second. So his dad, your great grandpa, right?
Yes.
Was
my dad's
started selling lots and then became a real estate broker also at the same time?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Started
so your
Moser Company.
Okay.
So my grandpa and his brother, who is Paul Moser's uncle, grandpa. So Paul is my second cousin.
Okay.
He works at Stream Data Centers. Mm-hmm. So the two brothers, two grandpas, were partners, and so they started in the Stemmons corridor, and they would sell lots to Crow and J.L. Williams, and so they ended up building a few buildings, and of which my dad and his siblings inherited. And so, but growing up, I would mow the warehouses. I would sweep out. A tenant would blow out. You
were the make-ready guy.
I was the make-ready guy. Yeah. Give him a brush. And I think, I don't know if that's where it all started, but, growing up, I would ask my dad for a skateboard or whatever, and he was quick to say, we'll go work for it. I'll pay for half or whatever.
Yeah.
So I started really seeing the value of things. And so we'd be sweeping out a warehouse, and I'd see something a tenant would leave.
Yeah.
And I would take it home and I'd sell it, and one thing led to another. And then at Highland Park, all my buddies were getting this remote control cars. And my dad said, they're going to get sick of that remote control car in about 2 months.
Yeah.
Offer them 50 cents on the dollar for it.
Genius.
So I started, we laugh now, and that's kind of where I started my, finding one man's junk is another man's treasure. And so now here today, and whether it's brokering or owning junky buildings that one person says, oh, you'll never lease that. It's 12 clear and it's asbestos all over, whatever, bad roofs. And so I love that. That really gets me excited. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So I in high school, I started a yard business and played soccer, Highland Park, went to college in Denver, Colorado at Regis University.
Okay, so how did you end up there? Did you just want to be in the mountains? You're kind of a mountain guy.
Yeah, I'm kind of a mountain guy, and I would take a lot of ski trips and summer trips to Colorado, and just really had a place for it in my heart. And but I was not a big college guy. So my freshman year, one other good advice my dad gave me, he was like, let everybody go to college. You go to junior college. You go to Brookhaven.
Yeah.
And you'll get your grades up, and I didn't really get into colleges that I really wanted to. I wanted to go to Tech or A&M, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't going to survive.
Yeah.
Just in the big school environment and everything. I needed the small teacher-student ratio.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Brookhaven and got my grades up. Sure enough, here comes everybody failing out, getting kicked out. Of their freshman year. So I was going. So anyway, I found this small college in Denver. It's called Regis University. It's a Catholic. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame of the Rockies is like I like to tell my dad. We're Mosers are kind of Catholic mafia, and or a part of the Catholic mafia in Dallas. So everybody went to Jesuit and Ursuline and Notre Dame, but me.
Yeah,
I went to the public school, Highland Park, and which loved it. I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade Highland Park, or I wouldn't trade Regis or whatever, but got to Regis and no fraternities, and was kind of like not making my grades. And a buddy says, "Hey, you're an athlete. You ever played lacrosse?" I'm like, I don't know. Well, so next thing I knew, I made the lacrosse team.
Oh wow!
And they just went from club to Division II.
Yeah.
So we traveled around, and we got our butts spanked, but it was a fraternity.
Yeah.
And it was belonging to something bigger and working hard every day.
Yeah.
And so that I really, I think that was a big part of my growing up in my college career was that. And I didn't have a whole lot of extra time. Any extra time I had, I would study or I'd go skiing or something.
Yeah. That's interesting. I went to, last summer, I went back to Texas Tech and went to the business school and spoke to a couple of the real estate classes. And I go back and I'm just talking to all the kids, and I was like, hey, here's my story at Tech. I came here, played football, got injured after 2 years and done all of that. And the professor asked, he goes, hey, why is it a lot of commercial real estate people are ex-college athletes? I was like, well, let me give you my schedule. When I was in college, my schedule was class at 8 a.m. Till 12, go eat lunch at the dining hall, go lift until 3, film until 5, team meeting until 6:30, get an hour break, be on the field at 7:30, practice till 9, do walkthroughs, installs. I was like, that was one day. That was Monday. And
structured.
It's very structured, and it teaches you to just... You got to get it all in, man. Like you got to get it all done. And I think the other thing was, if you didn't do it, you got punished in a way. You know what I mean? Or your teammates punished you, right? Like,
you're letting them down.
You're letting them down. So I think it's, commercial real estate in a way is kind of an individual sport, but it's, there's also, there's a lot of aspects to it that I think you can take out of being in college athletics that, I think it's a skill set that you learn that you don't really know that you're learning while you're learning it, but the implication of it down the road is enormous. So
absolutely agree 100%.
So you're at Regis playing lacrosse. It's a great sport, by the way. My son started playing it.
It's fun.
He didn't play this past year, and I was like, man, I really enjoy watching it. My daughter plays it now. So, but you're playing lacrosse. You're at Regis. What's next?
So. My senior year, I get a call from my buddy, David Bellamy, and he said, yeah, my dad's involved with this mobile home investment company, and we can go and do an internship there. So we go and we intern and we research all these mobile home parks that are dilapidated all over the United States. And we had all these fields on the database that we check, how close was it to a 7-Eleven and how was the occupancy, what were they getting in rents, amenities, blah, blah, blah. And then they would fly their jet out and make an offer to old man Peabody that owns the park, and so they started acquiring parks, and they ended up acquiring the dealerships, and then they had a lending arm, and so I graduated, and they said, hey, what are you going to do? Are you going to come work at ARC, Affordable Residential Communities? And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to go sell trailers. So next thing I knew, what was I doing? Selling trailers. Yeah. So I did that for about 6 months and I learned a lot. And thought I was going to make so much money, and then ended up having to pay for a deck that I promised, that I said, well, it's not in writing, but you promised that lady a deck on her 16 by 76.
Yeah.
And so anyways, my dad said, come back to Dallas. And he had just gotten done with acquiring and going through condemnation on George Bush Freeway with a bunch of land. And so he said, you can start cold calling for build-to-suits and all this stuff. So I came back to Dallas and started working for my dad. And then my uncle enters the picture. And so he's got a patent on a lightweight chemical. It's a polymer synthetic that makes lightweight. It's a lightweight concrete made by a polymer synthetic. Okay. It's an additive to a cubic yard. And so I started cold calling and talking to ready mixers saying, if I can, make your concrete cheaper, lighter, and stronger, would you buy from me?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So we drive to Iowa. We ended up selling to a guy who made insulated concrete forms. We make houses. And so we sold a license to this guy, and we're driving back to Dallas and why can't we build some small buildings out of this lightweight concrete that would compete? Because this guy it was probably 25% more than the stick and brick. So we built a lake house. We had OSB board. We made all these panels in Dallas in a warehouse and screwed and glued and steel studs and then pumped the walls full of concrete on site, shipped the panels to site, then you pump them. So anyways, long story short, I became a master. I felt like, or I got a master's degree in concrete and in construction, which really I give a lot of credit to that today when I'm selling warehouses. I know a lot about PSI and plasticizers and all kinds of super plasticizers, all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on. So I went to the World of Concrete and stuff, big shows. And so anyways, that was kind of slow. So we went back to our real estate after about a year and a half of that. And then I'd done a deal with Alan Gump over at Fultz. And I said, Dad, I think I need to get out from under your wing. I mean, you've given me kind of a good stepping stone, but I need to get out, I mean, you're not really a brokerage firm or anything. So Gump hired me, and I'll never forget. I mean, Gump put me, it was back when there was a Rolodex and there's a phone and go. And I knew Brook Hollow because I was mowing those yards and knew the neighborhood. And so started down there. And Gump said it good. You make a lot of calls, you're going to dig up deals. Yeah. It's a numbers game, right? Mm-hmm. So from there, Fultz got bought out by Kennedy Wilson. I was there for 2 years, and then I had met Middendorf, and he went to Regis, and we kind of hit it off. He was out before I was in,
and this is when he left Robert Land.
Robert Land started Certus Group, and so kind of stayed in touch with him, and he offered me a job, and Fultz or Kennedy Wilson was kind of changing everything up. So I went to work for him for 2 years.
I think you still have a sign up.
You know what? That's
in
funny.
Brook Hollow that says Jason Moser Certus Group.
I think you're right.
It's over there off
of
Almond.
Almond. Yes. Next to my buddy Jason Harlow's warehouse. So, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So from there, so things were changing at Kennedy Wilson. Mm-hmm. And so Chris Jackson called me through mutual friends, Jamie Jennings and Mark Hager, and it said, hey, I'm starting an industrial division over at Stream. Stream is a Class A office, primarily, and they're going to start an industrial division. This is May of 2004. So I'm celebrating my 20 year this month.
Yeah.
But
20 tours of duty.
That's right. So I went to work with Chris, and I think I was the third or fourth guy, and it's kind of been, the rest is history. I mean, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And
a lot of changes.
Yeah. Stream has turned into an absolute juggernaut. And, it's funny, you started there in the beginning, but I wouldn't say you're really the prototypical Stream industrial guy.
No.
You're
not I'm the opposite of institutional.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Well, and they have a very institutional side to them, and Brook Hollow doesn't really have institutional.
No. And I guess to complement Stream, they're very entrepreneurial, and they're I mean, if I went to them and said, "Hey, I've got a business plan, and I'm going to start a public storage division or a mobile home park division," they'd be like, "Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to sell them on it, but
sure.
They would be like, let's do it."
But they'd at least listen.
They would listen, yeah, and they're entrepreneurial, and so they've tried the multifamily, and of course, they've really succeeded in mostly office and data center and industrial, But yeah, so they just kind of leave me alone, let me do my own thing, and it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, Chris Jackson and Mike and Lee are just great to me, and then and I show up to the office maybe once every couple of months or weeks.
That sounds like
people say, you still work here?
Yeah.
Well, I ran out of money.
Yeah.
Came back.
No, that's that's cool. No, it's Stream has really evolved. I've been in 13 years, I guess. I was doing property management before that, but I really went on the brokerage scene, but that's been a huge evolution watching that company. Mm-hmm. So, but it's funny. It's funny you talk about your first job out of college. You're doing make readies. My first job out of college was doing make readies for Don Nobler.
No way.
Yeah. I was like, I got out of college and I was like, Jeff, I need a job. He goes, well, Don Nobler's got a bunch of buildings you can clean out. So it was a very temporary, in my mind, I was like, okay, this is a stepping stone while I go look for a real job.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. I remember the day I was like, called Don and said, hey, Don, I got a job. So like, I'm going to be leaving in like 2 weeks. And he was like shocked. I was like,
you don't like it here?
I was like, Don, I didn't get a degree to go sweep warehouses out. I was cleaning out. He'd bought an apartment complex over Knox Henderson area or something. And it was just I was cleaning out all the different stuff that got left. Yeah. And I was like, this is gross. But it made money.
Did he pass away?
He did. He passed away a couple months ago, I think, or 6 months ago.
I remember seeing him. I don't go to a lot of Mavericks games, but I remember seeing him on the floor.
Oh, he's always on the floor.
Always decked out.
Dressed
in some
up.
Crazy.
Going crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What a story. You could have gotten him in here.
Yeah. That'd been a very interesting story. But, he owned a bunch of buildings down there in Design District. It's funny that, he never fixed his buildings up, though. Like, isn't it funny how some guys don't do anything? Mm-hmm. Like they like let the building almost get condemnable.
Yeah.
And then they just end up winning.
Yeah. Where here we are snapping our suspenders. We got to do better for the neighborhood and clean this building up, and you're going to get more rent and lease it faster. And
they're like, I'm not going to
margin like goes.
Yeah. We spend all this money, do all these things. They're like, I'm going to do nothing. And then someone's going to show up one day and just pay me.
Gosh.
But it's funny. I remember the first time, you probably don't remember this, but I remember the first time I met you. I was not in the business yet, but Jeff was like, hey, I want you to get into this business. I was like, okay. He goes, well, go tour this building with me. And we toured at it was like 5:00. I think it was one of those wait till the employees are gone type tours. And so we were touring somebody through some building on, I think, Reading or something like that. But I remember, I always remember meeting you for the first time. So, but no, it's crazy the evolution of Brook Hollow and South Stemmons. I mean, when I got into the business down there and you'd already been in for, I got in 10, you were in 4 down there. You're already, 6 years ahead of it. And I mean, you couldn't give like 12 caps away down there. Like no one wanted those things. There were deals that would be done like a year of free rent just to keep people from ripping the power out of the buildings. Yeah. And now it's like, golly, the line is out the door.
Yeah. Yeah. Operating costs are more than we were renting the gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
Per square foot.
Right. Yeah. We lease buildings on a gross basis what operating expenses are today. Like,
It was hard to make a living just doing leasing. You couldn't.
No, you had to do everything down there. You got to sell buildings, and quite frankly, I hated leasing. I think if you do leasing, I think you got to be like Ken and Schultz, where you're like you're the dude for like, you know. Ken Schultz ain't out there running a tenant rep. He's out there pitching for 1 million square foot leasing assignment. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's the business model you got to take with it. But selling buildings has always been where it's at, in my opinion. Like that's
get paid right away.
Get paid right away. There's no, you know, when you do leasing or tenant rep, you somehow proxy to becoming a property manager. Hey, no matter, even if it's professionally managed, that tenant still calls you when they have an issue with the building. And it's like, so.
How many landlords did you have that you represented on a lease where they would hire a GC to do any TI?
Oh,
it was really just paint, carpet.
If you could get them to do that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them didn't want to spend the money in the event the client or the new tenant wants a different color carpet. I would always try to negotiate that. I would try to argue with the landlord that commercial gray is something that doesn't typically get negotiated if it's neat and clean, you know. And but man, it was. I remember when I would tenant rep and I would go tour like a Prologis site or something. I'm like, golly, y'all have this so easy. You leasing brokers that have this kind of product, so easy.
Fragrant deals plugged into the wall.
Nice water bottle. And how about a lifesaver? You know. And but you know, what's very interesting is like the evolution of pricing. It's funny. I would say this. I remember in the beginning, you would have listings and everything was $35 a foot, which at that time everybody's going, man, Moser lists everything way too high. He's just getting listings because he's telling them a bigger price or whatever, you know, because it's $25 a foot down here. And man, the tide rised and blew right through that, you know.
Yeah.
And but I mean, we would have buildings sit around at $35 a foot for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every blue moon, someone might show up and pay 33 or something, right?
Right.
Because there's nothing else to buy,
or that building just had all the exact specs that really worked out for that person. And you know, that's another interesting thing about these older industrial buildings is nothing was like production line done, right? This isn't like buying a 3-2 in Bedford or whatever, you know. Every building has different clear heights, has different power requirements, you know, some people need a floor drain, there's no floor drain, and you know, loading it, you know.
Not a lot of variance from tenant to tenant.
No. And Brook Hollow too, the buildings don't have what I call a lot of functionality, honestly, in today's world.
No.
But you can own it down there.
You can own it and its location.
And so that's what I thought was really funny was, I guess, I want to say like 17, 18, kind of creeping into 19 is when all the money started flowing into Brook Hollow. And all these PE companies were wanting to buy, we want to buy infill, last mile, all these things. And that just kind of put a beacon right on Brook Hollow, right? And it was interesting because they'd all go try to buy like a 50,000 foot building because that was a big enough deal to kind of start the engine. But there's not a lot of 50,000 foot tenants in Brook Hollow. If it's 50,000 feet, you're talking about a building with shitty clear height, bad truck court, and a guy that probably lives in Park Cities that owns a company and he just wants to own the building.
That's right.
And I think that's why they've had, you know, if you look now, there's kind of quite a bit of vacancy down in Brook Hollow.
Yeah,
it's funny enough.
It's crept up. Nobody can put a finger on it. It's I think the activity's picked up, but yeah, the amount of 20,000 footers right now. I mean, you can run a list and it's, you know, probably 40 or 50 up into Hines too. But there's a lot to look for. And nobody's really dropping their rates because they've underwritten it, you know.
Yeah, they capitalized it at that rate. They underwritten it at that. And
ouch.
It's hard to take the L, you know. But what I see sometimes too, though, is like on the tenant side is like, hey man, I can go to the DFW airport and get a brand new building for about the same price.
Right.
Like,
right.
I don't have to be here.
30 clear, 28 clear.
Right.
Yeah.
28 to 32 clear. So I don't know, it'd be an interesting thing, but you also own a lot too down there. So
yeah, I've sold a lot of the stuff in Brook Hollow, but yes, over the years we've definitely bought and sold and fixed up. And Dennis Lord and I, bought a couple dozen buildings, and that was back before. And I guess a lot of the Cantex and people are kind of offering you bring a deal to us and we'll let you put in some limited, get into our limited partnership, put some money into it.
Yeah.
More and more brokers, I feel like, are doing that, or investing than when we were early on.
I think it's twofold. I think it's one, there's more investment companies out there buying.
Mm-hmm.
And because there was these private equity shops didn't exist when they didn't exist in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't exist in 2015. I mean, they might have existed, but no one chased B&C Industrial like they did,
No.
And it really turned on once office blew out, A lot of people have shifted their focus to buying these things. And so, it's interesting. Do you even find buildings in Brook Hollow that you can buy anymore that make any sense? I mean,
no, the ship sailed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's also crazy is that forever the pitch was, if you're selling to an investor, you're probably selling too cheap.
Yeah.
Now the investors are probably paying more than the users.
Yeah. That was, and man, I say 21, all users would lose out to an investor all day long.
Yeah.
I think the tide could be turning a little bit on that, but still at the end of the day, there's really limited supply of what you can buy in that market.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's really nothing. I mean, think about call it 2010, 2011, right?
Mm-hmm.
You cold calling somebody, hi, Jason. Yes, I'd be interested in buying a 30,000 foot building. You're like, I'll be back tomorrow with 15 options. And now it's like,
there's 3 inside 635.
Yeah. I'll let you know if something comes up. So, but I don't know, man. It's just been crazy seeing all the things go on down there, and but it's been a pretty cool ride. It's been interesting seeing just the landscape completely change on it. And I mean, like, did you ever think there would be like distilleries and breweries in the old central? You had that listing forever. The Proto Park now, I guess.
Yeah, Haynes and I made that listing with that lease with the distillery.
Yeah.
70,000 square foot at $8 net or whatever we made that deal at.
Yeah. I mean, talk about at that time catching lightning in a bottle. Like,
yes.
But I mean, hey,
I think they just sold it too, didn't they?
I think they did. They took the risk though. So
170 or something. I don't know what they got.
Something crazy. But I mean, golly, that building.
Oh,
that building looked like it got bombed. It looked like it looked like Halifax Street.
Yeah, it was awful.
It was terrible.
Yeah,
but you had that listing when it was terrible too.
Oh yeah, a couple times.
Yeah. I mean,
fired myself. I think
when it was the Central Freight Group.
Yeah.
You had when
they had like the entire building, and that guy out of California bought it with that tenant in there.
Yeah. No. God, what an interesting. I had so many people try to look at buying that building, and they just never pulled the trigger. And hey, props to the twins. They pulled it off. So, well, this is something I always like to ask on here. What was probably your most awkward or funny cold call you ever made?
So, and I guess I'll flip it to a showing.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but then a cold call. But I was showing 1539 Round Table.
Okay.
Little building over there by the old Mexican consulate.
Yep.
At the time, street was always jammed. Anyways, I get there early. I put my key in the door, and I'm about to open the door, and I noticed there was like something like there was wire that was wrapped around the pull bar. So I keep pushing on it. And all of a sudden, bam! and it was a booby trap. And so it had pulled a fire extinguisher. So the wire was tied to a fire extinguisher. The fire extinguisher fell on a fluorescent bulb. You know how loud those are when they break?
Yeah.
As a kid, you'd break those.
Gun.
Yeah.
Like, boom.
And so that boom. So I was immediately like, oh gosh. So I called the police, immediately. They show up, and there was ice in a Slurpee. I think they'd run out. The back door was open. And I think they'd run out the back, and they were stealing copper. But I went to, and like every single dock door had all these fluorescent bulbs up. So like if you moved them, they would fall and they would alarm them.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's calculated, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So that was probably my, one of my top, but, and then the other one was the dead guy.
Yeah. You found a casualty of copper theft.
Yeah. Yeah. That was pretty crazy.
Well, tell that story. Everybody knows that story, but I mean, it was on Irving Boulevard, right?
Yes, yes. So Clint Riley had a lady off of Slocum that was looking for some dead storage, and
no pun intended.
and she had a mink coat on and pulled up in her white Cadillac, and so we're walking, and the husband was with her, and he was like, "Hey, somebody in the back of the building." And so I'm like, "Oh gosh," because the building had been stripped. Mac Lawson owned it with. I forget his company. And so it's just been stripped. I'm still showing a building saying, you want to lease it or buy it. There's no electricity. That's how desperate. And I remember it being like right before our Christmas party at Stream. So it was after Thanksgiving. The concrete was cold, relatively cold. So anyway, I round the corner and I'm like, hey, we're here. We see you. We're here. Like, get up. Like, he's like he's lying down in the very back. And so the husband says, "Oh, I'll go over there." I'm like, "No, don't go over there. I'm not going to go over there and kick the guy or whatever." So he kind of makes this. The guy had his back to us, and so you couldn't see his face. We're probably 100 yards away, but so the husband takes this wide, like, so he can kind of see the face, and he's like, "Oh, this guy ain't going anywhere," and. To not get too graphic, but his hair had fallen out, and the critters had chewed up. I mean, he'd probably been through rigor mortis. I mean,
oh man,
I don't know if he couldn't have gotten electrocuted. Yeah, because there's no electricity. We think that maybe he had
came in through the ceiling,
came in from the ceiling and fell and hit his head or something. But the UT Southwestern and the fire department and everybody showed up. Yeah. And I was just like, I clearly didn't do it. But I sent a couple of pictures around back when we had the Blackberries. Yeah. And that went around. I think it came back to me like within like 2 hours, like everybody went around the real estate community fast. Yeah. So, Clint Riley, I think, was representing that tenant, and she did not end up renting the building, but that was the dead body. Oh man, broker.
Golly, that is. I remember one time, all the power got knocked out on Regal Road because some dude was up in the. He was up.
He was stuck on it, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was stuck up on the. He climbed up the freaking
I remember
pole.
That. I remember that.
Like what was
737 Regal? That was the metal place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arbor
Metals.
Arbor Metals. Yeah. God. Like, you gotta love drugs like a lot to risk that.
Right. You really know what you're doing.
It's, so speaking, copper theft was like rampant down there.
And still is.
Well, didn't it kind of stop for a while because they started making the scrap yards like document it? Yeah. And then I think they got rid of that.
People figured it out and wrote faked, job receipts and stuff.
And now it's back on, game on again.
Yeah. And, I've had 2 buildings in the last couple of months that have been hit.
That's what, man, when we get a vacant building here, I'm like on edge. Yeah. Like just get it done. Like we had a tenant leave the other day. Like they left like 2 months early. Like we knew they were leaving, but they left 2 months early. Didn't even lock the door. Even crazier, the tenant is the lien holder, we bought the building off them. They did a lease back. They left the building wide open down in Cedar Hill. And I was like, really? Like, you know what could have happened? Like, thankfully we got it secured, but golly, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't take long.
Yeah, this is your collateral. Like, have a little give a shit, I guess. So, but, what do you think was probably the most unique deal you ever pulled off down in the Stemmons corridor? Like, just like the trifecta deal or something like that.
I know Jeff was good at that.
Yeah.
Jeff was good at having one sell and then trade into another one. And then I think he did like maybe a 3 or 4 once.
Yeah.
I never did do any of those. I mean, but I will say I've sold the same building 4 times.
Which one?
8400 Ambassador.
Oh.
And you and Jeff had it under contract. And y'all...
We post out.
Yeah. Y'all...
We made some whining complaint about asbestos.
Yeah.
We should have just ate asbestos for breakfast on that deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you own it at that time?
I sold it to the family, my dad, and then we sold it to Lawns of Dallas, and then Lawns of Dallas sold it to Pratco, who now has it right now.
Okay.
But originally, I sold it from Anderson Chemical Company to Phil Schiebel and Ray Washburn.
That's an interesting story because that's where the whole ground lease came into play.
Yes.
And that is that story is a testament to the creative brain that was Phil Schiebel.
Oh my gosh. At the time, I thought it was, I was like, what? Am I going to get paid a commission? You know, right? And Phil could have taken them to the mat for specific performance because the seller wanted out. And seller is a chemical company, so their attorney said, "Why are you selling your building? You're in the chain of title. You can get sued in 10 years, 20 years, or whatever that you."
So let's just be clear: there wasn't really an issue.
No.
But the fact is, a chemical company out of Georgia.
Yep.
And
Anderson Chemical Company.
And just because they were a chemical company, they're
a target.
Phil's phase 1 triggered to phase 2.
I don't think so.
No,
it was literally like just their attorney raising the red flag, saying, "You idiots! You shouldn't be selling this building. Back out of it."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, and maybe Phil's phase 1 calls for a phase 2.
Okay.
I don't remember that because I know Ambassador had a lot of underground contamination.
The whole place is contaminated. Like, everybody should get over it.
Yeah.
But, and if I remember correctly, or, you know, you tell the story, but like, didn't Phil they were like, hey, we're not going to let you, they didn't want to close, right?
Yeah. They wanted to close. They just wanted to rip it up and give their earnest money back. And Phil's like, nope. Yeah. We'll just, how about this? Moser, see if they'll do, I'll pay them X for closing costs, and then we'll just sign a 100-year ground lease, and I'll pay them $30,000 a month flat for 100 years.
Yeah,
and it's just I own everything on top, all the improvements basically.
Yeah,
and sure enough, I mean, I guess being in Brook Hollow, we don't do a lot of ground lease stuff like out at the airport or whatever. But that was the only one I've ever worked on, and it was it was creative, and so they. It was interesting.
And that ground lease is still in place today.
Still in place.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have bought it, including my dad, thinking that, okay, there'll come a day where this seller will be ready to sell the fee simple deed to me. And I think that guy probably needs to probably be passed down to the next heir.
Yeah.
Where someone's like, why do I have this? You know?
So it's funny. I'm sure I learned it in real estate school, but the first time I ever really understood fee simple, because it's not something, it's not a question you get asked. It's just an assumption, right?
Yeah.
And I was selling the modern store fixtures building to Trinity Industries, and their attorney was like, "Is this a fee simple transaction?" And I was like, "I don't even know what he's saying."
Yeah.
What is he talking about?
I think it's a simple transaction.
Yeah. I think it's simple. Easy. Yeah. These people they're reasonable. But to that point, I guess a lot of the office buildings on Stemmons Freeway were not fee simple. They were ground leases or something, or, some form of that. And so, but yeah, that's the one building probably in all of Brook Hollow, or that's at least an industrial building that is on a ground lease. And, man, it's a great building. I mean, a phenomenal building.
It really is.
Duplex 40, great yards on both sides of it.
Yeah, if you could own one size building in Brook Hollow.
That's
a 20 to 40 or a 40 duplex or something. I mean, that's pretty fair way.
So I have a personal stat that's not really a stat, but I don't know if you could believe this, but I have never, ever done a deal on Ambassador Row. Never sold, leased.
I won't tell anyone.
Yeah, I know.
That's kind of where
if we ever have to go pitch against each other on Ambassador Road, we'd be like, this guy's never even transacted up the street. I sold that building 4 times.
Yeah. And it's kind of where the bigger buildings, it's where the biggest building is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's kind of
door.
It's kind of a boardwalk for Brook Hollow. That's when, I got the Global Views building agreed to. I called it the day I lost like $5 million. And I got the Global Views building agreed to at $31 a foot. And I couldn't convince anybody to buy it with me.
What year?
This was probably 18, 19. And I had just come out of some financial BS from my steel company, and I didn't really have any money. And I got the contract, needed $100,000, put it in the title, and I didn't have it. I had to let it go. Then Entrada bought it, flipped it to Stone Lake for $57 a foot a year and a half later.
And then is that who still owns it? Stone Lake?
I think Stone Lake still owns it. But that was the closest shot I had on Ambassador. Oh, and I had the site across the street at the same time, direct with the bank. That's now the racetrack. I was like, we can buy Main and Main of Brook Hollow.
Yeah.
Come with. It's funny what I would do with that. When I was trying to convince people to buy it with me, I would say, meet me in Uptown. And they would meet me in Uptown. So I'm going to drive you to Brook Hollow. I want you to see this is back when all the apartments were going up in the design district. And you could kind of just see it all developing. And I was like, and we can own Main and Main. It's going to touch this one day. Well, I couldn't sell that dream.
Got to be a dreamer.
Yeah, I couldn't sell it. I feel like I could do it today, but not then. But that was big. That was my biggest whiff on Ambassador Row. But no, other than that, I never pulled a deal off on Ambassador. I don't know why.
The thing that I always thought would be a moneymaker is if someone could figure out how to raise those ceilings.
Man, there's that guy, and it's funny because he always throws me off because his name's Craig Jones. And he's like, Jeremy, it's Craig Jones. I'm like, yeah, Craig. Oh, wait, no, Craig out of Chicago that raises the roofs on buildings. I've gotten bids on it, but it just never pencils out. It's like $30 to $40 a foot.
Yeah.
It's just.
I was always looking for that building.
Yeah.
Like take it to grade level and get another 2 feet or something. It had a bad floor. And so trying to get creative, and it just never.
Well, something you did, I would think that you've done that was pretty creative is when you and Stream bought Motor Circle off of Jeff. You and I brokered the deal, but then you went and condoed it all up, sold it all off, and you've done that with several properties. And
we've done it 3 or 4 times, and it's. I mean, now looking back, it's easy to say. Because we were able to create a product type that was not out there, a small building, 2,000-3,000 square foot building, and so people would pay a premium for it, right? But now, and I'm not sure I would probably still do it again. But now, if I could have held that one and 3 others that I had, and with the rent growth,
oh gosh,
it is kind of brain damage. I mean, and you're in it for 5 years, Unless you're it's a duplex or something. I mean, Jeff kind of coined the selling off the side of a duplex.
Yeah.
Right?
He's done that several times.
Yeah,
We did that on Roundtable, right? He bought that one on Roundtable, then you and I brokered it to Chris, and that one side to Chris, and Jeff kept the other side.
Oh yeah.
So, I think Chris just sold his a while back. So, but yeah, no, the condoing of buildings is pretty interesting. And so, let's just talk about that for a second. So when you condo a building, does each building have to be platted out separately? You just meets and bounds
one big, the same. Yeah. It not even meets and bounds.
Oh, okay.
The condo regime speaks to the specific building and the survey. And then along with that has a homeowners association.
Which pretty much covers the common area maintenance.
And, it's the operating expenses on a lease.
And then probably the roof replacement in the event there is one down the road.
Yeah. And so we found that you're forced to condo if the building is not facing a street, and Motor Circle was an easement. So
wait, what do you mean you're forced?
So you could I say forced, but you could do the meets and bounds like Jeff would do on Diplomacy Row because you're facing Diplomacy Row.
Okay.
But if you were trying to sell the back of Diplomacy off. If you were trying to sell a piece of the building in the back, you'd have to condo that.
Oh, okay.
It has to have street frontage.
Front facing. And Motor Circle, the street was an easement.
It was an easement, yes.
Okay. So it wasn't an actual
street. Utility easement, yeah.
Okay. Got it.
But yeah, I mean, I think we paid $30,000 or something for the condo docs and you let her rip. And yeah, it was a great deal. I mean, we were in it for $50 and we were selling them for $120 or $115 or something. And then now Haynes and I have resold them for $200 plus, $250.
That's nuts. That is nuts.
But you guys bought it for $18 from Trinity.
Jeff did. I just cut distribution checks, which made me want to figure out what I'm doing in life. And that's what I want to do. I used to cut.
Here you are doing it.
Yeah, I used to cut them checks, man. And I was like, wow. Like, really? Like, I would cut them distributions that I didn't make in a year, in a month. You know, it was nuts. I bet Trinity wishes they never sold that thing. But yeah, that was an incredible deal. And it's funny, I think Jeff probably would have bought back with y'all if it wouldn't have been probably like a conflict of interest, of selling it. I think he would have.
He was in a bunk partnership.
Yeah, but I think he would have just been like, I'll buy Motor Circle again with y'all when I sell it to you, But what a machine that property was, man.
Yeah.
I guess it's all individual owners now, but doesn't Quadrant own a couple of the buildings still?
I sold one. I sold the last one that Quadrant owned. They bought 3 from Garrick Patterson that we had sold to Garrick. And then they slowly sold off the 2 internal and then the 1 outside the brewery.
I'll tell you something really, I don't know if you remember this on that transaction. There was a group in there called Artifacts. Do you remember those guys? And we were signing estoppels and they wouldn't sign their estoppel. And we went, and they didn't want to sign their estoppel because part of their TI package was that we would fully HVAC the warehouse. Well, we did that. And they said, well, this isn't cold enough. We're like, well, you didn't request a differential. And, so we were in this dispute over that. But I mean, like, I literally it was spelled out in the lease how many tons we were putting in, right here. And I was like, is this your name? He's like, yeah. I go, so you signed this, right? Yeah. But you don't want to sign the estoppel. He goes, no. I was like, okay, I go back to Jeff. I'm like, man, this guy hates y'all. Like, he's pissed. Like, and it's funny. I remember we talked to Jamie Jennings about it. We are like, hey, this one guy he sent, we have, in some of those leases, you have the right to sign the estoppel if the tenant doesn't. And so anyways, but we were like, hey, let's try to be amicable here and get the tenant to sign it. So I walked over there with a $2,500 check. And I said, hey, man, here's your check. Here's a check to sign this. You really don't have a leg to stand on here. You signed off on the construction plan, all this stuff. We installed it. It's doing what it does. He didn't want to spend more money on more air conditioner, which is probably what it would needed, right? And so anyways, if you don't sign it, then I'm not going to, if I walk out of here without this sign, this check walks out of here too, and it doesn't come back. And he was like, no, I'm not signing it. I was like, okay, cool. And then he sends me, I think he faxed me because we had a fax at the time, faxed me the estoppel, just all marked up. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. We just like, hey, Jamie, we're going to just sign it for him. He's like, that's fine. We'll deal with it.
Gosh.
So anyways.
Some of the stories on estoppel signing is pretty crazy.
Man.
Holding up deals and.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. We bought a building back in November, and all the tenants signed the estoppel. Now we're going to renew them. They're like, you know how screwed up this building is? But the seller told us that don't mess with him and he won't mess with us. And I was like, oh, great. So there's, anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, the estoppel is always it's always a point, you know?
Yeah.
And then I've always had it too, where, you know, I'm like, tenant calls me up. They're like, oh, hey, this is your responsibility. I'm like, I literally just bought the building and you said there was nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Like, but all of a sudden it's like caving in on you, you know? So
new owner's got a bunch of money, so try to go hit them up.
Yeah, go get them. Yeah, that's right. So, but well, what do you think? Like in your career? What was kind of the one thing or a couple of things you always did on the regular basis that just made you really successful in being a great street broker?
You know, besides just working hard and just hitting it hard and eventually trying to work smarter and all that. I think just the ability to gain people's trust.
Yeah.
Honesty, and you try to cut corners and you get caught and you lose, you know, what they say, it takes forever to gain somebody's trust and, you know, just a second to lose it.
A moment to lose it.
Yeah. So I think it's and maybe one of my better traits or characteristics of just being successful is just making friends, connecting with people, and making people feel good. Yeah, you know, and then that would, you know, you let people talk, tell their story, not the opposite. Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, you know, just so I think that's probably one of my best traits or characteristics or reason for my success.
It was a big hit.
Is that lightning?
That was lightning.
It's pretty dark out there when I was walking in.
Yeah. No, that's, you know, a lot of that trust is developed on the street broker level just from showing up so much. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You know, it's like,
this guy is hungry. He's a young guy. He's got a tie on.
Yeah.
I haven't worn one of those in a while, but yeah, showing up and it's 95 or 100 and you had a tie on and they're like, you know, I don't know what you're selling, but I have a lot of guys that was like, come on in here. You know, I want to hear what you're, you know, a young guy and then I also heard a lot of it. You're making me uncomfortable. Take that tie off. Yeah. You know,
my favorites are always election years. We're like, I don't know if I can stay in business if this guy gets elected.
Oh gosh.
I was like, really? You might as well quit now, bro.
Oh man. That was always a slower year, wasn't it? People, if you had any kind of caution or anybody was worried about something that was out there that they didn't know if a bill was going to pass or tax law, and all of a sudden we're just going to wait. Yeah. We're just going to hold tight. And I hated that.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going on right now, though. It seems like, you know, obviously the Fed is waiting on dropping rates now.
Yeah.
They're waiting for the election.
Yeah.
So, well, what about a book? Is there a book that you really enjoyed that you read that kind of changed any trajectory for you in life?
So one more thing on I guess the success of my daily that I wanted to share is this thing that I have, and it's called a wheel of life.
Okay.
And so each part of the wheel, there's a pie. I've got one right here.
It's like a Trivial Pursuit piece.
Yeah. And so you've got all these things that make up and it's health, it's spirituality, it's family, it's vacation, it's work. Yeah. And so you fill it out. How much time do you spend in each one of these? Yeah. And your wheel, it doesn't matter if you're a 1 in each one but you need it to roll. Yeah. If you're all work and you're neglecting your family, is going to be pretty mad at you, or your health, right? And so it's hard. And I preach it a lot, and I'm not always good at doing it, but you know, it's just having a balance, having a balanced life, not partying too much, not, you know, giving your wife date nights, so.
Yeah, no, that's, you can get real caught up in working a lot.
Oh, it's addictive.
It's never over.
No.
It never ends.
No.
And if you're not making deposits in other categories in life, you will be making withdrawals at some point, and that's, I heard that one time and always kind of thought about, like if you're not making deposits into your kids' lives, your wife, time with your wife, stuff like that, yourself, there's going to be you can't make any withdrawals on it, so it's the balance of it all is I heard it explained too, like work-life balance before. I heard it explained where it's like, hey, in the beginning, your work-life balance will be like all work.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you get, this is you in your 20s, your early 20s, you're going to work 60 hours a week. It's all you're going to do, all that. And then as you get older, it starts balancing out to the point now where, you can probably take your girls to school every day.
Yeah.
Not worry about it.
Yep. I do. And it's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's, I know many times we've talked in the morning, you're like, hey, I'm taking the girls to school. I'll call you back or, and that's, man, I'll tell you what, I took my son to school today for the last time.
Oh,
because he turned 16
over
the summer. And I was just like, oh man, it got me, dude. I was like, just watched him get out of the truck and walk into school. And I was like, man, that's it. There you go. Time's a thief. You know? And, so that was, but you know what? There was no one that had to tell me anywhere to be today that I couldn't do that. Right. And, so that was, I took him to school as many times as I could this past 2 weeks. Cause I was like, man, this is kind of it, having that time in the car with them and, and, but I
don't think I'd be, I mean, if I had to start a family when I started my career, I don't know if I could.
It'd be tough.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Something would have broken.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I waited till I was 36. I mean, I didn't wait, but that's when I got married.
Yeah.
I did wait as long as I could, I guess, but, and Brooke was 30.
Yeah.
So, but,
no, I got married at 25, but we didn't have kids till I was like just after 30. And, it's, my wife's done a really good job of allowing me to do my thing. And, and, that's another thing that I always kind of think about is like, how important is your spouse in your success? Cause we've all had friends that have gotten divorces and had multiple family things go wrong. And I'm sure they all look about the same at the end result, man. I mean, your life is in a tailspin if you can't keep it together at home. And, so that's
having that rock, that support. Yeah.
It's huge.
Those wives are priceless.
Yeah. So
just ask them.
Yeah. They will make withdrawals for you. Okay. So what about the book? What about a book you've read that you really?
So I'm not a huge reader, but I'm trying to do more and more reading. I get through a couple of books a year.
Yeah, that's pretty good, honestly.
Yeah,
I'll probably get through the first half of a couple books a year.
Okay,
never
lose interest or whatever.
I just, it's God. There's so many distractions nowadays.
Brooke's like, weren't you reading that book last year on this vacation, the same vacation? I'm like,
yeah, I only read on
I'm
vacation.
I'm rereading it. So, but I like kind of business success books and like The Big Rich. Yeah. Have you read that one about Texas's oil royalty families? That one's, you would love that one. T. Boone Pickens is The First Billion is the Hardest. Psychology of Money about greed.
Yeah.
The Trammell Crow Master Builder. There's one recently about the Dallas Cowboys, Hole in the Roof.
Oh, okay.
It's about when Murkison started them at the fair, at the Cotton Bowl
Fair Park.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I would say though, if I could, the number one book that's probably still impactful in my life that I think back is the How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Man, that is like the number one theme. I would say that's probably our top book, right, Isabella? Like that's the number one that people read. And
yeah, they say, I mean, next to the Bible, it's like the number one book read or something crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to give them to the younger guys in the office and stuff. But it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I took a course once. It was over there off 635 right by Brookhaven. They had a little classroom. It was kind of fun.
Yeah. No, that's that one's a big that one comes up pretty regularly. So well, what's something unique about Jason Moser that most people don't know? I already learned a lot today. I didn't know you were a dairy farmer. I had one more other question. Or your descendants of dairy farmers. You were never a dairy farmer.
I've never milked.
You never milked the teat. Do you still have family in Switzerland?
Yes. Moser over there is like Smith.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do you go to Switzerland every now and then?
We need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to Switzerland once. I was 15. It was
awesome.
It was like another world. It was, we were in Lucerne and it was just, it was really cool. Like, I want to go back. And it's
takes you back in time almost.
It's like, it's just
kind of like Italy or something.
Yeah. No
poverty.
Yeah. It's just, everything was so clean. Like, it was just like, you feel like you just walk over to the lake, start drinking out of it,
Yeah.
Stuff.
Like Bachman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very similar. So, but yeah. So what's something unique about you that most people,
well, I guess, I love to weld.
You like to weld?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I like fabricating.
Fun.
And I like taking something that's literally someone is throwing out on the curb. Mm-hmm. And my wife's like, oh, great, he put it in reverse, and I back up and it's something that I can maybe use, some kind of iron related, steel related. Yeah. And I don't even know what I'm going to use it for.
Yeah.
And I don't, in my last 10 years, since we've been down in Oak Cliff, Kessler Park, I haven't had that Sanford & Son junkyard to throw stuff into. In fact, when I first got married, 2009, we were living in Bluffview over by Love Field, and I had intentionally bought this house single and had a spot behind my garage that I paved, and it was like I could hide all this stuff, and I would just find stuff all the time. And then when I got married, when I moved, or we started having kids and we moved down to Kessler, I was intentionally looking for a yard or some area, like, I guess woman looks for a nice kitchen or something, I was looking for that. I was like, well, it doesn't have this extra space, but
you look for outside storage.
iOS. Yeah. And quickly decided that I was selfishly steering the family to a house that wasn't best for them. But, so we are building a house right now, and I've got the garage is like a garage and a half deep. And so I'm going to have another little man cave where I can have my welder and grinders and torches and stuff. So, But yeah, and it's almost like, I don't really like big projects or something. I love it when somebody would call and say, oh, I want to make this grill, this thing that goes over my campfire, and it's for my tortillas, and it's just a flat area I can throw, or something that's like easy for me to like just, kind of put together, or go to my scrap bin.
Yeah.
So, which kind of, comes back to the buildings, I love finding a building that's just falling over and seeing the vision of cleaning it up and leasing it and underwriting it, just a whole process that goes into buying a building. But I would say that welding or tinkering.
MIG or TIG or both?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got into welding when I owned my steel company because hiring welders
expensive, right?
They're just the biggest prima donnas you'll ever meet.
Look at me.
Well, it's more the guys. Man, I just remember one time I had this welder that would come in and work. Whenever we had to move to 2 shifts, he would come in and work night shift for me. And he just kept negotiating with me one time, and I finally just hung up on him. Mm-hmm. And I just went out there and I was like, someone teach me how to weld. And so I started welding every night. I welded out parts every night. And
these are orders that were going out.
Yeah. And and if it was TIG, I would just tack them up. And but I loved it. Like it's like it's like controlling an explosion in your hand.
Yeah.
And I would just put on like Pantera and put my shield down. But I mean, like, it's pretty therapeutic.
Dude. Yeah. It's like painting, right? Or anything. It's like you just get lost.
You do.
You will look up and it's like 2 hours.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I'm controlling this explosion right here. I can't get too far this way.
The focus.
Yeah. It's very focused.
Takes you everything out of your head.
Yeah. I wish I still had a place to do it. I've thought my son would love it if we welded. But I've thought many times of just setting it up, but I just never get around to it. But yeah, that was something that was probably the biggest thing I hated when I sold my company is I didn't get to weld anymore. Like I didn't have it all set up, So back to welders being prima donnas, we had a robotic welder.
Oh, wow.
And they would walk over and take my parts off my robotic welder.
Oh.
And I'd be like, guys, this isn't here to replace you. This is just so that we can do more. And they'd all be bitching and be like, oh, look at this. This is all welded.
Oh, yeah.
You seen that?
That's a Matador guy.
That's the Predator.
Oh, that's the Predator.
Yeah. That's all.
That's rebar.
Yeah. Here's the bull.
Oh, there's the bull.
So this is from a company called Metal Park. They're in New York, or they're in like Brooklyn, but they just take old motorcycle parts and they make. I mean, they've got. Isn't that cool? I mean, like this guy's badass. He's got the gun and everything on him. I mean, those are all motorcycle parts.
That is cool.
All welded together.
Sprockets and
and man, they have like a full. I'd say probably 8 foot tall Optimus Prime transformer they've done. So it's if you ever go to New York in Christmas time, they always have a booth at oh gosh, I can't remember. There's a park. One of the parks there has an ice skating rink in it, and they just set up a bunch of shops. But this company's called Metal Park, and I just love their stuff, man. They got all kinds. They got Star Wars stuff, and it's just all scrap. It's all scrap getting put together. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool.
So yeah. No, the artistic creative side of things is definitely a place to get lost. It's it's like when I'm playing music or something, man, that's just you can't think about anything else because it'll go very wrong if you start thinking about something else.
It's important to have that outlet in life, regardless of what you do. Maybe exercise or,
but the point where you can just completely disconnect and really, like you said, focus. It's focusing on one thing because in our life, we're so distracted focusing on multiple things. But yeah, the focus of one thing and being very good at that is pretty cool. So, but, well, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the business we've done together.
Oh yeah.
It's been fun. We actually own some buildings together.
Yeah.
A
real good one.
Oh man, that might be the best one. It's funny. Jeff one day goes, "Hey, would you ever sell that?" I go, "I don't think so. I think that's my motor circle."
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, golly, I was making distributions on it a week or two ago, and I was like, "Golly, there's that much to distribute." Sweet,
just keeps showing up. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, no, that's been a fun project. So that's really cool that, even though we were competitors forever, we own stuff together now. That's and
I listed stuff with you too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You and your dad gave me a listing.
Yeah.
And that was cool because it made sense, right?
Yeah.
You
had the building next door and
the
yard.
You had the yard, and we put the two together and put a tenant in there. And I guess did they just move out? Was it
MedSpeed? I'm not sure, but Romy sold the building.
Oh, and you sold the lot with the person that bought the building.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It worked out.
So
yeah,
but yeah, man, it's been a fun ride, and I'm glad we got you on here.
Yeah,
what a great story.
Yeah, and, so cool you're doing this.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's a lot of fun for us, man, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback with it. I get an email now, people asking me about a property, and it's, oh, hey, by the way, keep the podcast coming. We love them and all that stuff. So I hope a lot of people are getting value of hearing all the stories of all these guys that have done some really amazing things in Dallas real estate, like Jason Moser. So, all right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jeremy.
All right. See you.